The South African Institute of Civil Engineering says that most of the public infrastructure in the country is poorly maintained and at risk of total collapse. According to engineering institutions, the deterioration is due to crime and non-payment of services in some areas. Let's talk about this with Professor Marianne Vanderschuren. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time, Prof. Welcome to the program. I hope I didn't do too badly there with your surname. First things first, I mean, the deterioration of infrastructure, public infrastructure in particular, is quite obvious for many of us to see. What is the extent to which you've been able to establish the exact extent of the damage?
So since 2006, the South African Institute of Civil Engineering has done the infrastructure report card, where we grade our infrastructure on a 5-point scale from A to E, where A is world class, B is fit for the future, C is satisfactory for now, D is at risk of failure, and E is unfit for purpose. And what we see over time, that in 2006, the overall grade for all infrastructure was a D+. In the upcoming World Cup in 2010, the improvements were there, and that was measured in 2011 with a C-. In 2017, unfortunately, we saw deterioration of our infrastructure to a D+ again. And at this moment in time, in 2022, we see the lowest grade that we have ever established, which is an overall D. If I summarize of our 14 categories and 32 different subcategories, we see that only one type of our infrastructure in the country scores an A, 8 a B, 6 a C, 13 a D, and 4 are virtually, have virtually collapsed or have collapsed, and they have an E.
And just on that point, given how long South Africa has been having the conversation about the decay of its infrastructure, why are we seeing the situation not improve?
Yeah, it's very sad for us to see, and we feel that we should be providing this document every 5 years. Every time we hope that we see improvements. Unfortunately, what we find is that we in South Africa in most places are reactive with regards to maintenance of our infrastructure. There are exceptions, and reactive means that we're not proactively making sure that we have maintenance schemes that the infrastructure stays fit for the future, because that's really where you would want to be with your infrastructure, and definitely not lower than a C, where it's satisfactory for now. Go ahead.
I was looking here at the report where you say that Eskom generating infrastructure, that you've rated at a D level, but transmission, the network, that's rated at a B. Explain the difference, especially when you look at the context of the ongoing power crisis.
Yeah, so the transmission nationally, making sure that the electricity can flow, if I can call it that, from where it's generated to all the different parts of the country, that is really good. But what we see on the ground is that substations are often not good enough. So the smaller distribution network is not good, as well as we have seen declines in generation, where the demand actually, the overall demand for electricity in this country has been quite stable over the last few years. We see that Eskom actually has not been able to meet that demand.
What about the ongoing conversation in this country about water infrastructure and how things have got so bad, in fact, in the last month or two, where metros such as Johannesburg had to impose restrictions, not because everything had run dry, but because the infrastructure is simply not able to cope with the level of demand, because that poses a very real-life threat, especially for people who, for instance, can't afford to buy bottled water or get a tank to store their own.
Yeah, unfortunately, what we see with the distribution networks of water is that they are not maintained very well. Unfortunately, that infrastructure is sitting underground, and the users don't even see often unless the water comes to the surface that there are leaks underground. We see overall in the country that only 60% of the water that we provide, so that has been treated for human consumption, actually reaches the end user. The rest just seeps away into the ground, which is a problem. We see also around the country that the resources itself are often not enough. We know Cape Town has faced a day zero. We have other parts in the country that face a day zero. And we are not rethinking how we actually utilize the water. If I can make a comparison, for example, to the City of London. In London, every drop of water is utilized 7 times. Here, we utilize 60% of every drop of water. Now, we can't go on like that with increased demand, also because our population is still growing.
And what it has shown is that infrastructure development is, in fact, a human rights issue, is it not?
It is. And that's where we see the dissatisfaction from the society and often protest action because of it. I would like to call on the society to not damage the infrastructure even further, because that will cost money as well. And but proactive maintenance plan need to be put in place. We see some early signs of improvements, and national governments and institutions sitting under the presidency starting to put maintenance plans and asset management plans in place. But unfortunately for this infrastructure report card, we haven't seen the benefits of that yet. So hopefully that slight upwards trajectory that we see will actually materialize and result in much better grades in the next round.
And just a final one, Professor. I'm quite curious because whenever budgets are tabled in Parliament, we hear, even at provincial and municipal level, about the billions going to be spent on infrastructure development. But if communities aren't seeing the difference, is it that money is being directed towards the wrong things, or it's properly allocated but just doesn't reach those who are most in need?
So obviously during COVID things were reallocated, and rightfully so. We had a crisis on our hands. But what we see at the moment, that funding that is allocated sometimes is even given back to the Treasury, because there's just not the capacity in the municipalities and some of the provinces to spend the money wisely, and to also audit that what is done on the ground is done properly and is warranting the money that is spent on infrastructure development and maintenance.
Professor Marianne Vanderschuren, good to speak to you, ma'am. Thank you for your time.